Michael Jackson survived the devastating allegations of a decade ago, but it could be argued not without considerable damage to his recording career. In fact, his record sales have dropped dramatically since 1993. In 1995, a double CD was issued, History, Past, Present, and Future Book 1. The package boosted 15 of his greatest hits, Be It, Billie Jean, and the rest, and 15 new songs such as The Thoughtful, Stranger in Moscow, The Elegant Earth Song, and Scream with Janet, the first single released from the package. You're Not Alone also include remains among Michael's best songs. It made chart history in America by becoming the first song ever to go straight to number one in the Billboard charts in its first week. It also topped the charts in Britain after debuting there at number three. On listening to You're Not Alone, one wonders how many times Michael tries to tell himself during his most desperate and anguished times that he did have support in his life from a higher power or even friends and family, whether he actually believed it or not. The only problem with You Are Not Alone was the bizarre video for it, in which Michael and Lisa Marie frolic with semi-disrobe against an ethereal backdrop. I don't know why I did it, Lisa said. I was sucked up in the moment. And it's kind of cool being in a Michael Jackson video. Come on, actually, the disrobe made no sense and was a bit disconcerting. One wish they would put their clothes back on. Another standout is Michael's version of Charlie Chaplin's Smile. What a vocal performance and delivery he gives to this song. Never has he sounded more sincere, more gorgeous. The song was scheduled for release as a single, but canceled at the last minute where it was decided it was probably not commercial. However, some promotional CDs, now collector's items, did slip out, with pictures of Michael Natalie dressed as Charlie Chaplin. Huge statues of Michael were constructed and unveiled in a number of European cities to coincide with the record's release. We owe it to Michael to have a huge statue of him towed down the Thames as a publicity stunt. Also, a controversy over the lyrics of Leon Taraborrelli broke out, with Michael accused of anti-Semitism because of his lyrics, me and me. Here replaced them with strike me and do me as a result. However, the publicity for Michael is usually good publicity when he is promoting a record. He's went on to sell about 15 million copies worldwide. That slipped up from Dangerous, which had managed 27 million. That sold 25 million. Thriller went to 52 million. And Off the Wall, 15 million. Still, History was a major success, artistically as well as commercially. The one largely ignored by media, still distracted by his turbulent and vastly entertaining personal life. Blood on the Dance Floor, History in the Mix, Michael's 1997 album, contained five new songs and eight previously unreleased Kick A dance remixes of songs such as Scream, You're Not Alone, and Stranger in Moscow. From history, several of the other songs on Blood are also memorable. Ghost stands out perhaps because it's so evocative of Michael's spellbinding ghosts, long style video in which he is transformed into an old white man with no rhythm. It's classic must see Michael Jackson. The bad news for Michael was that the collection was not as successful in America. It was dismissed by critics and much of his audience, who seemed confused as to whether it was a new release or some kind of hybrid combination of songs. Michael's British fans, however, did not disappoint. Blood was a major hit in the United Kingdom, kicking off with the single release of Blood on the Dance Floor. Excuse me. Debuted at number one, then the album. In truth, there may be nothing in his entire catalog better than Blood on the Dance Floor. a song that many of Michael's American fans don't even know exists. It was so overlooked, he wrote and produced it himself. Blood only sold about 4 million copies worldwide, while it's not fair to equate the sales of an album of mostly remixes with the sales of his other products. This was still a weak showing. It and the Ghost video, much like of what Michael did at this time, was losing the ongoing controversy of his world, the ongoing confusion about children, Lisa Marie Devereaux. Without that, this stellar work would no doubt have found an appreciative audience. It should be noted that it was because of its weak showing. Sony executives no longer view Michael as being invincible. Heads would not roll. It was learned that if you have a flop record, or if he was unhappy with the company after Blood on the Dance Floor disappointed in the USA, he has never a company priority again. Invincible, released in October 2001, was sold to be the most expensive recording ever produced. Sony advanced Michael about $40 million to make it. They then spent another $25 million to promote it, though it's difficult to specify how much funds were allocated because the promotion it was so weak. From the beginning, Michael didn't seem excited about the project, and perhaps his lack of enthusiasm and focus become apparent to some listeners. The fact that it took about 3 years to compose the album, more than 50 songs were produced, mixed, and remixed, with writers and producers being hired and fired and hired and fired. Some many observers feel like Michael was, as one producer put it, sick to death of the whole thing. Also, Michael began battling with Sony early in the production of Invincible. He had thought that the licenses to the masters were his biggest selling albums, Thriller, Bad, Dangerous, etc. Were to revert back to him in 2000, I was counting the days until that one happened. He would then be able to market the songs himself in some way or with some other label and not have to split the proceeds with Sony. However, when his advisors checked his contract, they found that the classics revert back to Michael only if he releases about one new CD for Sony every couple of years, which was never going to happen in Michael Jackson's world. One in which he spends years on just one project. There's even a Christmas CD specified in the deal. He's not done one of those since 1970 with the Jackson 5, which Michael said he didn't know about, as well as a couple of soundtracks. Michael was way behind in his proposed release schedule, would never be able to catch up, and wouldn't think to even attempt to do it. However, for each specific album, he did not deliver, which was most of them. Sony was able to add a few more years to the countdown rights reversion of the others. As it stood, Michael will be just a tad older than God before the rights to his top selling albums would ever revert to him. After some investigation to the matter, it was learned that the same attorney who represented Michael on this deal had also represented Sony. How, one wonders, was this ever allowed to occur? Thus, Michael managed to extricate himself from the entire Sony deal. Then, using the obvious conflict of interest and his negotiation as leverage, in the end, it was decided he would be able to leave Sony, but not until he had delivered Invincible, then a greatest hits package, and then a box set. Still, signed to the label or not, Michael would owe Sony hundreds of millions in advances, loans, and other monies the company had invested in his chaotic personal life and professional career. Michael was so chagrined by the situation with Sony that He really didn't want to produce another record for them. If he received a telephone call while in his studio recording Invincible, it could mean the end of that day's work. Sorry, I've got business to take care of, he announced while walking out of the door. If he had to go to the bathroom, the production staff would fret because Michael would sometimes sneak out and not be seen or heard from for days. He's an artist, explained one producer. They're usually pretty nuts. However, when the album was finally released, it demonstrated something many of Michael's supporters already know. He is bells when recording his own material, such as the sublime "Speechless", which is really the only track he solely wrote. In about 45 minutes, he says, after a water balloon fight with his children, and produced from beginning to end. However, he doesn't seem to have the fire in his belly he once did to write and produce his own music. Therefore, Invisible was largely a compilation of material from outside songwriters and producers, such as Rodney Jerkins, Britney Spears, Brandy, and Destiny Childs. If Michael wants a huge selling album in his future, perhaps he should write and produce it himself, all of it. He still has the magic touch, if not the drive, ambition, and perhaps self confidence. The initial jingle release was the somewhat formulaic Rodney Jerkins song You Rock My World. It had been Sony's decision, Michael was against it and fought for the upbeat, probably more commercial, unbreakable to be issued. He had already conceived of a video for the song. It's interesting that even at this stage of his career, his choices were vetoed by his label. In the end, You Rock My World stalled at number 10 in the United States. It debuted at number 2 in the United Kingdom but dropped from there quickly. Sales in the rest of Europe were comparable, a top 10 hit in most countries, but not a huge record. The video for You Rock My World was a miscalculation. It looked like a remake of the Smooth Criminal short film, but with Michael in a black suit instead of a white one. In most of the production, Michael seemed to be camouflaging the top of his face with his fedora, causing the viewer to wonder what he is trying to hide. Again, he didn't seem inspired by the concept anyway, and if it did have a weird cameo appearance by Marlon Brando. There have been upsetting debates between Michael and Sony over the video's budget, and by the time he was about to begin production, he was, as one of his intimates put it, completely over it, done with it. The dancers had rehearsed for days before Michael appeared on the set. When he was finally alive, he did pretty much the same variety of jerky robotic steps he's been doing for years, as if trapped in his own myth and afraid to break out of it. A standout in Invincible is Carol Bayer Sager's Kenny Babyface, Edmonds, and John McClane's sparkling You're My Life. It was recorded just 5 weeks before the album was released. That's how late in the schedule they were considering material. The writers first played it for Michael on a Thursday. He loved it, changed the lyrics from You're My World to You're My Life, and got a songwriting credit in the process, and then recorded it on the next evening. John McClane, an executive at DreamWorks Records, was has been one of Michael's most trusted and capable advisors for decades. He wrote the song based on a exercise he had created for his guitar practice. The second release from the album was Cry. However, Michael was so angry at Sony for the budget allocated for the video, he refused to even appear in it. Then, the Delightful Butterflies began receiving radio play and could have been a hit record. However, again, Jackson and Sony battled over the video and production was cancelled, as was the commercial release of the song. The battle lines were boldly drawn between Michael and Sonny in a war that continued to be so bitter it would contribute to the commercial failure of Invincible. The executives at the label, all the way up to its certified at the time, Tony Mottola, didn't care what Michael thought about anything. He was now that low in their priority list. His very good song, What More Can I Give, recorded in a host with a host of pop stars in the wake of 9/11 and an effort similar to We Are the World, was shoved by the label. Of course, Michael didn't help matters when he hired a former gay director to direct the video. The man is a friend of his, and Jackson didn't feel that anything was wrong with the association. However, he inadvertently provided Sony with more ammunition to use against him. Frustrated and angry at the label for this and other sins, Michael then went on a terrible, ill-advised campaign against Tommy Mottola, holding a press conference and other public events in the summer of 2002 to call him a racist, insisting he is very, very, very devilish. This was not his best moment. In the end, Invincible sold only about 10 million copies worldwide, a crushing blow for Michael as well as for loyal fans who campaigned it with possibly more devotion and organization than Michael's own label, Sony did. Even though it entered the Billboard charts at number one, it sank quickly, falling out of the top 10 in a month. It also debuted at number one in the UK, Germany, Holland, and a number of other countries, but it didn't last long at the top of those charts either, except in France, where it was number one for 3 weeks. In Britain, it fell out of the top 10 completely in 3 weeks. The reviews were generally dreadful and often unfair, focusing on the artist's unusual nature rather than his music. Maybe the expectations have been so high for a new Michael Jackson collection, there is no way for any recording to rise to the occasion, let alone one caught in the crossfire of such acrimonious exchanges between artist and label.